going to look specifically at calculating equations of circles. So here's the equation of your circle. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Okay. The thing that's going to be important about this is notice the pieces of information we have. First, you have your radius, which we can find over here as being r squared. Now, the other piece that's really important to remember is that we have your center, which we can find as hk. So notice we have an h and we have the k. Now, we have x and y here. Now, these points are firm or printed. Okay, they don't get filled in. Instead, the h, k, and r are the only things that are going to change. Now, the other important things to notice about this is when your sign, so notice right here, my sign is subtraction. Okay, this right here tells me that h is positive. And that comes from the fact that whenever we look at a factor, we always look at it as x minus the value. So when this is a minus, your h term is actually positive. Well, that's going to be the same over here for my k. Alright, when this value here, when you are minus, your k is positive. What that means is if I have the equation of a circle and I want to look at the negative, okay, what it looks like to have a negative center would have an equation of a circle that looks like the following: x plus h squared and y plus k squared equals r squared. So what's important to remember about these is that if your sign in your factor is negative, then your term is positive. But if it's positive, then your h would be negative, or the center point would be negative. Okay? Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at a couple examples. So we're going to start with this one where we want to write the equation of a circle in standard form given some information. So I'm going to go ahead and draw out my circle. I'm going to make it nice and big so that we can see. And inside your circle there's some information we have. First, we are told that we have a center, and we're told that that's at the point -3, 8. Then we're told that we are passing through a point at 0, 7. So I'm going to go ahead, come out here to my edge, and label this as the point 0 or 7, 0. Now I'm going to connect my two dots so that I can take a look at this radius. Okay, so here would be the radius of my circle. Okay, so this is your radius, which we call r. Now, if I want to find the equation of the circle, the first thing I need to do is I need to know the distance of that radius. And so the way I calculate it is using the distance formula. So in this case, my radius is going to be the square root of x2 minus x1. So I'm going to go 7 minus a -3 and square it. And then I have 0 minus 8 and square it. So x2 minus x1, y2 minus y1. I'm going to reduce this down as far as I can. So 7 plus 3 is going to be 10, and I need to square that. 0 minus 8 is a -8, and square it. So here this gives me 100 plus 64. So I'm at the square root of 164. Now, most of the time we want you to go reduce down as far as you can, and in this case you could go ahead and do that. If we were to reduce this down, we would pull a 4 out, which is going to end up giving us 2 square roots of 41. But the reason why it's not necessarily important to reduce this down all the way is because I'm going to use my equation. So let's look at the equation of that line here. So we are going to have x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals my radius squared. So I have to plug in my center. So here, this is going to be x minus a negative 3 squared plus y minus 8 squared is equal to my radius. So here, this would be 2 square roots of 41, but I have to square that. Now the reason why I said you didn't necessarily have to reduce this 164 is because you can't leave it like this. Right here, you can actually do the math. So for your radius, you actually have to square that out. So here what's going to happen is your square is going to be applied to both. So this ends up being 4 times 41, which is 164. So we end up getting x plus 3 squared plus y minus 8 squared equals 164. So when we're dealing with your radius, sometimes you can see that simplifying that radical as far as it can go is only going to completely undo your process at the very end. Okay? So do make sure that you are double checking your work, double check your radius, double check your problem to make sure what you had. However, this is the result that we wanted, the equation of our circle. Alright, let's look at another one here. So here we have the endpoints of a diameter are 5, 3 and 8, negative 3. So just like before, I'm going to draw myself a circle. Okay, so here we've got my circle, and I'm going to input my information. So we're talking about endpoints here. So I have, say, one endpoint down here, and we'll call this the point 8, negative 3. And then I'm going to go as close to, cutting my circle in half as I can. Draw all the way across. So we'll put the other point over here, which is the point 5, 3. Which means somewhere right in here is the center of my circle, and it's unknown. Okay. So there's a few things that we have to know. First of all, to find your diameter, we are going to use your distance formula. To find your center, we have to use your midpoint formula. So we have to use both formulas in order to complete this this problem. So the easiest formula to work with first is going to be your midpoint formula. So we're going to look for that center. And to do that says you take your x values, you're going to add them together and divide by 2. And you're going to do the same for your y values. You're going to add them together and divide by 2, thus creating your center point. So in this case, we're going to have that 8 plus 5 is 13 over 2, and negative 3 plus 3 is 0. Now I'm leaving this as a fraction because nowhere in my problem was I told to approximate, so I have to leave that as fraction form in order to make it my most reduced. And so this is my center point. Now that I know the center point, I have to work on trying to find the radius. So there's a few things that I have to do. First is I have to calculate my diameter by using that distance formula. So that distance formula says I'm going to take my x2, so 8, subtract x1, which is 5, and square it. Then I'm going to take my y2, negative 3, minus 3, and square it. 8 minus 5 is going to give me 3 squared. Negative 3 minus 3 is a negative 6 squared. 3 squared is 9. 6 squared is 36. This is going to give me the square root of 45. And in this case, I can go ahead and reduce this down, which is going to give me 3 square roots of 5. Now the reason why I wanted to go ahead and do that is because this is my diameter, and what I actually need for my equation is radius. So what I need here is I need to have just this part of the circle, which is your radius, and what we just calculated here was the whole diameter distance. So I have to remember that my diameter is equal to twice the radius. So that means my radius is going to be my diameter divided by 2, which in this case means my radius is 3 square roots of 5 divided by 2. Okay? Once I have all my pieces, now I can go ahead and start working my actual problem, which my problem here was to find the equation of my circle based on my given points. So let's go ahead and do that. Remember, the equation of your circle is going to be x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. I know my h and my k based on my center here. 13 halves is my h and 0 is my k. So here this is going to end up being x minus the 13 halves squared plus y minus 0 squared equals, my radius is 3 square roots of 5 divided by 2. So 3 square roots of 5 divided by 2 and square it. Okay. So in this case, what we have is we're going to have x minus 13 halves squared plus y squared is equal to 45 over 4. You'll square the top and square the bottom. Alright, now another way that you're going to have to determine your circle is if you're given a circle that's been plotted on a graph for you, and you need to write the equation that matches. So the way that you want to do this is, first you have to find your center. So when we're trying to find the center, you kind of want to come to what looks like the highest point of your circle. So let's call it this point here. And what we want to do is we want to figure out what is the distance from this point straight down to its lowest point. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So in this case, if my diameter is 8, then that means my center has to have a radius of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It puts my center right here in my circle. So that is going to be the point -1, -1. Now, we at the same time found that radius, in this case r was equal to 4. Okay. So we have everything we need in order to create the equation of our line. So remember, we have x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals your radius squared. So here this is going to be x minus -1 squared plus y minus -1 squared is equal to 4 squared. So with that, the equation of our circle becomes x plus 1 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals 16. And that is the equation of the line, or the circle, that we wanted. Alright, so if you have any questions about being able to write the equations of the line, please let me know. Otherwise, I do hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you next time.